Ideology is dangerous, but the lack of ideology is just as dangerous. Aimlessness and an aim are two sides of a double edged sword, both of which are just as likely to stab you in the gut as whatever you point it towards. This isn't to say you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Striving for better, or whatever you perceive better to be, is an important step both personally and societally, but the further of pursuing a goal can leave you blind to why exactly that goal mattered so much in the first place. An aim for aim's sake can kill you if you don't watch it, and when that aim comes from a leader without dispute, they can send you marching straight into the meat grinder. In Decade, you play that unquestionable leader, and through the game's masses of dialogue, evidence, and time manipulation, it's not always that clear to you whether or not all that power's really a good thing. Decade is a game about the last four children left alive after metallic rain has decimated all life. In a bunker after 5 years of survival, you get a time machine working that can send the three other members of your survivor party back in time, where they can live for 10 years, do reconnaissance, and hopefully change the timeline that led to the horrible world you inhabit. That's a pretty fascinating concept for a game, and one that's executed with a searingly idiosyncratic visual flair. It's a game that has a lot of things it wants to say and a lot it wants to ask of you, and yet, despite how intriguing that all sounds, the game's official trailer has 409 views on YouTube and 23 likes. Well, 24 now. I'd like to tell you a story about how this game got on my radar and the two distinct reasons I think it will be underrated after its launch. In the middle of May, I was applying the finishing touches on my Labyrinth of the Demon King video and got an email from a developer who sent me a review code unprompted. Getting a code in an email isn't a particularly strange occurrence as I cover games on the channel, but they mostly come off the back of me asking PRs if I can get access to some sort of review build for critique purposes. There was no handshake of coverage here, no suggestion I would play it, just a 15-letter code in my inbox, and it was specifically sent because of my admittedly rather humbly small YouTube channel. It also appeared to be sent directly from the person making it. No PR in the middle, just an honest to goodness pitch from someone who was actively making the game. I checked the last Piscean's YouTube and other social media, and I saw 21 followers on Twitter, 26 on Blue Sky, and 4 on YouTube. There's this mystique to the relationship between those making and marketing games and those covering them, and there's something in the honesty of this email that struck me. This of course doesn't mean I'd like the game or even necessarily play it, but it just so happens to have a unique enough premise to get me to download it and give it a go. Here's what happened when I played Decade. Let's take it from the top. Each of your 3 time-jumping survivors starts their journey as barely a preteen, but the 10 years at a time they spend in the past means you have a limited number of jumps until their age begins to catch up with them. After 5 or so jumps each, the children are nearing the end of their life, meaning that you have no choice but to exit the bunker and take on whatever world is left for you. Where you start with just one point in time to jump back to, you open up new timelines with a handful of major points, and you unlock not only information, but evidence, tools, and a whole host of items you can use. Sending the children back is an act of simply picking your items, person, timeline, and intent of your action, and the who or what will see the effect of said action. This could mean sending someone back with a gun to take down the leader of a political movement, or one with a new ideology to start something fresh. Alongside getting new information and strands of clues to pick up, your cast also learn traits like pessimism. They can pick up in-game ideologies like veterism and Nerolianism. I genuinely have no clue how you say either of those words. These will affect their responses when you go to talk to them, what actions they take in the timelines you send them back to, and whether they will actually come back. See, ending up back in your bunker is a choice made after every cycle of 10 years, and the children, as they're called even when they're old, have to suffer through those choices. Every second you drive home your ideological desire to make the world hospitable, and through occasionally dubious rationale, is a second you are spending someone else's time to serve your own needs. There's this undercurrent that makes you feel like a bit of a monster as these 3 children come to revere you like their god or fear you as some sort of evil mastermind. Of course, you can just be a friend or advisor, but that undercurrent exists regardless of how you or your cast see it. This is all enforced through the understandable belief that you are effectively their savior. Sometimes my desire was to learn more about the endings I found and the paths that took me there, and sometimes it was just an excuse to see how the children reacted to said paths and what they tell me about myself in return. You are effectively a blank slate at the start of the game. Decade doesn't give you an info box or a description of yourself, it doesn't even tell you what you look like. Your actions lead you down paths that your children reflect on and bring to you. You can then choose to hear them out and form a narrative, or shut them down entirely. Sometimes this can lead to loyalty, other paths can lead to violence. However, the game actually sees both as its own opportunity depending on your goals. As you send them back, they come to you with items and you can access them, reading poetry, snippets of newspaper, and art. The art of the game itself, in turn, is quite evocative. The screen that plays right after sending a child to enunciate that time travel is often made up of clippings of conversations and evidence you find in the style of David Carson cutouts or 2000 zines. There's a visual art you make here through your decisions. As you find beliefs, you can customize the UI and music in turn. Decade is a game about ideology because it is very, very caught up in its own politics. Neuronialism, the praise and subtle suggestion that your dedication to your work and not the work itself is a virtue, can lead to the maximizing of efficiency that, when tied to an inherent sanctity of life, leads to overpopulation. In itself, this doesn't become the problem, but a vacuum for something much more powerful and potentially deadly. Feritivism, the worship effectively of power and might, a fascism analog, leads to war, infighting, violence, and destruction. Decade doesn't both sides its politics, it's more about putting an extreme and letting you do your own form of course correction. The game can feel both pro and anti-revolution, progressive and regressive, incrementalist, and also in favour of something entirely new. This makes it a fun exploration of action itself. Ideology is a lens and your choices are the focus. As much as single dev projects are a petri dish for experimental game design to flourish, they'll also come with a major caveat. The game is in a weird state technically, and there's some predictable issues with the level of polish. Touching on how do-it-yourself this game feels, I ran into a problem where I simply couldn't actually complete an ending, and the developer told me a stray bracket got caught up and caused some sort of problem. A new fix was pushed out right after our conversation at just a couple of megabytes. Updates came practically every night after downloading, fixing issues everywhere, and this leaves me with little faith of coming across no problems if you play it, but I do have faith that those problems will eventually be righted, especially if flagged. As well as this is going to sound nitpicky, but I can assure you that's not the point. The arguments Decade makes, or more accurately pushes you to make, are based on systems and structures. The goal isn't just to kill a man, but an ideology. That's why interpretations of some endings can feel a little lacking in nuance and perhaps a little childish. For instance, one vision of the world involves the culling of people above a certain age in order to counteract overpopulation. One scene in that shows someone shooting someone else for being a year over that age. She pleads as she is just marginally above that age. This presents two problems to me. One, the way that pleading is done feels a tad strange. This person presumably grew up, lived, and carried out the effects of the system they lived under. They knew their death was coming, and though it's natural to plead for your life anyway, the fact that this argument is given to another person also enforcing that system feels like a juvenile way for her to act. The visuals for this also feel a tad hammy, for lack of a better word. There's a melodrama to it that just kind of put me out. One could, of course, argue this relative naivety is intentional, but it also doesn't bat away my other problem. This whittling down of the systemic to the personal removes some of the shock of the system. The game talks in concepts and themes and yet feels oddly intimate. There are two people in this cutscene, and that's where the conflict lies. It's not a team of exterminators or an automated system, it's one person hunting down another like a bounty hunter. Replay value is both a good and bad thing in Decade. With lots of endings to find and effects that lead to those endings, there are plenty of reasons to go back hunting for more information. I will say I really like some of the conclusions. There's this constant pull in one direction or another, like walking over a tightrope. If you push too much in one direction, you risk going over the edge, but luckily hurtling back down to the floor shows some wondrous sights. However, some of my bigger problems with the game are actually relative to its scope. The game hints at something much bigger than it is, and it leaves it in this space where it actually feels both surprisingly brave in how open-ended it tries to be, yet it falters somewhat. A lot of the actions you can take result in absolutely no changes. This isn't always a problem, but it feels strange that sending someone back with weather reports, newspapers, or a gun in some circumstances doesn't at least give you some more information or a new item. In this same vein, the game sometimes gives you the same dialogue right after getting it if you don't do all that much in the timeline you sent them to, which is just rubbing salt in that existential wound. This happens regardless of which characters you send and tears down a bit of the facade of creating three characters with different names, UI colors, and personalities. It removes the voice of character and turns them all into this nebulous blob of random traits and kind of helpful advice. Despite these issues, it's all a rather enchanting game with strange mixtures of jungle, experimental, and atmospheric music. The stringing together of ideas feels so wholly unique, and I haven't quite played something like it. I think Decade captures a certain joy that one might experience from 90s and 2000s point-and-click games, many of which I wasn't even alive for. It does take inspiration from some of the more obvious choices there, but also games like Snatcher, which I love. When I say it will be underrated, it's not because I believe Decade to be some sort of unflawed perfection or deserving of my time over plenty of excellent games in my backlog. It's because it's unique and enthralling, yet also seems to have nearly no presence online. It's a game that's been seen by maybe thousands of people, and it seems hard enough to get people to buy or even wishlist games as is. At the time of writing, the game seems to have just north of 150 followers on Steam according to SteamDB. Sincerely, I don't bring this up to talk down the game or talk myself up for mentioning it. I merely mean this to express how strange it is to see that certain groups of thoughtful, political, artistic, or even nostalgic people aren't latching onto this and eating it up. I asked the developer if they're working with the PR team, and they told me it's just them working on the game. They don't really have the money to hire a team, and they don't even know if there's a huge audience for it in the first place. And I could kind of tell from their first email that this was the case. This game will be underrated because there are tens of games launching on Steam every day, some of which with better, bigger marketing, and some of which simply with a selling point that's easier to get in front of people's eyes. The mountains of games that don't even make it onto Steam through storefronts like itch.io show that a surprising amount of the games we play are just the ones put in front of our eyes. This isn't to proselytize about smaller games or criticize the consumer, just to note the tension that lies in between developers making games just because and those who need people to buy them to avoid going hungry. See, I told you ideology was scary. However, this isn't the only reason I feel Decade is going to be underrated. The game is quite self-indulgent in its world building, with fictionalized political ideologies and figures spread haphazardly throughout it. And you better believe Decade doesn't keep any form of compendium on any of them. You remember that ideology, write it down, or you forget it. This means sometimes trawling through periods of time, quick saving and quick loading to test out different groups of items and ideas. This will often happen if you have a grasp of what's going on and why. That's inherently a bit alienating as you either figure it out, sit in limbo, or walk out of the bunker into the horrible ending you've unleashed upon yourself. You can absolutely do that, by the way. From the very start of the game, you can walk straight out and get pelted by the rain, main character to Red Mist any percent speedrun. There's also this macabre feeling of memento mori that hangs over Decade that makes it quite sad even in its best moments. It's difficult to feel as though you're forging anything close to a good ending when you're sending people out to age themselves to death. That's an uncomfortable and powerful idea to sit with. Decade is also going to be underrated because of the type of game it is. Philosophically, politically, but also just mechanically. It sometimes feels like organizing a spreadsheet, and I had notes on what different ideas were and plans on how to tackle it. Even without its glitches, like the fact it still called me Wick, which is the original name it gives you before you pick your own, or one pervasive save problem in a file where loading an older route would end up in only having 2 children if one died in a later save. Decade would be a bit abrasive if it performed perfectly. I've not seen every ending in Decade, though I have seen quite a few. I've not read every item in Decade, though I've seen quite a few. And I doubt I've seen every timeline, though I've felt quite a few. It's both intriguing and grueling, atmospheric and grating, immersive and disconnecting. There's a good chance that with this video, I've actually given a certain kind of person just as many reasons not to get it, then get it, and that's kind of the point, I suppose. My goal here isn't just to talk up a game I enjoyed more than I thought I would. It's certainly not to just encourage you to blindly go out there and play it as I weaved my critique of the game throughout this video. It's instead to spotlight not just the game itself, but the mechanisms around games and the reason we know about them in the first place. This is to acknowledge that caring about games or any art form really also means ignoring most of it. This begs a cynical question. If something as special as Decade can get swallowed up, what else do we think we gloss over? And to that, I think I'd say you're maybe missing the point in the first place. I play guitar. I have for some years, and for a few months a year, I really want to perform in front of people. So I bring an acoustic guitar and about an hour's worth of original material, shout to a few crowds or lack thereof, and then I'm satisfied again for a while. That ache and longing to get it from my head into the head of a stranger is gone. Art can be a product, but it can also not be that. It can be a song whistled in the wind, a painting shown to no one, or a lengthy allegorical tale of enthused prophets and infused prophets. I don't bring up the size of this game to diminish it. I bring it up to empathize with the roaring flame that is a need to create something, anything, really, and I bring it up to see a little bit of myself among the ashes. There's an industry around games, but there's so much more than that too, and sometimes nothing at all. Making a game for yourself, or for another person, or the world is good enough as long as it exists, and maybe that ache to get art from one mind to another has subsided for a while with Decade, and maybe this video is another extension in a never-ending line of people talking about people. Ideology is dangerous, but so is inaction, and maybe doing something, anything, is good enough. Thank you for watching my video on Decade. This was a strange one that evolved so much from where it started. Just some night I played the game, didn't think much of it, and this came out, I guess. It's really hard to enunciate all of this, really. It took quite a lot of words. But I think I was astounded just to see not that fanfare that comes out of every big game that explodes. Even these huge ones, like your Balatros, these indie sleeper hits, they're not unknown beforehand. They have these big demos, they have PR teams behind them, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think it's perfectly good to try and get your eyes in front of people. I would actually say that a lot of this relationship to PR is actively good for our engagement with and understanding broadly of art. It puts it into our eyes. It gives it a reason for us to care. And I think with some games you have to find that reason first, and Decade is one of those. I rambled again about the central thesis of the video, which I realised is maybe a tad pointless. Either way, if you liked how this game looked, give it a wish list on Steam. This video should be coming out a few days before it's out. It's out May 27th. Generally, I probably wouldn't advise pre-ordering things ever, so don't do that. But wait until it's out, maybe wishlist it, see what other people think, see if it's your type of thing. If it is, let me know. If it's not, also let me know. I love to hear people's perspectives on these things. I think I just hit the table there. I hope that didn't come through. Either way, if you liked this video and you want to see me ramble about things, then tell me what to ramble about. Subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff, but tell me what games I should be checking out. There's so many out there all the time and not enough time to actually play them all. So I'll try and squeeze them all in. Either way, let me know what you've been playing and what you want me to play and what looks good in the future. Let me know if you like the idea of this game, if you played many point and click games from, the 90s and 2000s. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, please like, all that stuff. Thanks.